Welcome to the very first episode of Beyond Procurement. I'm your host, Nessrine Hertelli, and I couldn't be more excited to launch the journey with you. If you ever wondered how procurement is evolving beyond spreadsheets and supplier negotiation, that is the podcast for you. Each episode will dive into leadership strategies, procurement innovation, and business growth. Because let's be honest, procurement is no longer just about cost cutting. It's about strategic impact. And today, we're kicking things off with a game-changing topic: AI, sustainability, and how they're reshaping procurement as we know it. And to tackle this, we have a powerhouse guest, none other than Sam Achampong, Regional Director of CIPS Asia, Australasia, Middle East, and Africa. Now, before we jump in it, let me introduce myself. I'm Nessrine Hertelli, founder and managing director of Efficient Consulting. Think of me as your friendly procurement nerd, but with a mission: to help business punch above their weight, unlock growth, and make procurement a powerhouse function. Because let's be real, procurement isn't about spreadsheets and contract anymore. It's about strategic impact, innovation, and that's exactly what we will uncover in this podcast. Now, let's talk about today's guest. I'm honored to welcome Sam Achampong, a global leader in procurement excellence and a LinkedIn top voice in our industry. Sam has decades of experience, a deep commitment to driving innovation in supply chains, and a bold vision for the future of procurement. Welcome, Sam. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, great. Yeah, look, I'm a procurement professional, have been for many years. Started my career in London too long ago than anyone needs to know. But I started off with an organization called Land Securities, where I was in procurement, mainly asset management procurement for them at the time. I moved into a procurement consultancy role in London, again for a few years, and fast forward to I think 2007, the end of 2007, when I took a holiday to Australia, and on the way back, I stopped in the lovely city of Dubai, and I looked around on my kind of short stopover in Dubai and said, "Wow, this is an interesting place." I ended up moving here to Dubai, where we are now, probably 3 months after that layover, to take up a role with an organisation out here, and since I've been here. I've moved on to several organizations across all different industries, from being in advising government to telecoms industry, to the real estate industry, as well, since I've been in Dubai. But throughout my career, throughout my procurement career, I've always been a member of my professional body, which is CIPS. So I've always been a member. In 2015, I was asked to consider if I'd be interested in managing CIPS. CIPS for the region. So that's how I ended up eventually crossing that void to become the regional director for CIPS for the Middle East at the time, and finally expanded my role to other regions as well. So so thoroughly enjoy what I do, and I think in the roles that I've held, specifically in the Middle East, I've been lucky to be involved in setting up procurement teams for different organizations. And I think the difference between my role now with CIPS is that I get to work with a number of organizations at the same time for the same purpose. So that's a little bit about me.
Let's start with a big question. One that has a lot of professionals worried right now. Is AI making procurement professionals useless? AI is disrupting industry left and right. In procurement, some fear it will eliminate traditional roles entirely. What's your perspective? Are we looking at a future where AI replaces procurement professional, or is there a different story here?
I think everyone knows the answer to that, and I'll put a different perspective on it. And the perspective is that I've heard, actually, it's not my term, but somebody said to me that AI will not replace procurement professionals, or ChatGPT will not replace other professionals. What it will replace is people who don't know how to use ChatGPT. So actually what's happening here is in procurement, we're raising what we call the intellectual entry point to the profession. So previously, yes, you could join procurement in a quite transactional role. Maybe you're doing something administrative, and that's your contribution to that function. But what AI or technology does is it warrants those roles insignificant. A human being no longer has to do transactional tasks. Technology can do that for you. So what does that mean? It means you have to be a smarter person, a more intelligent person, and also someone who knows how to interact with technology to be successful in procurement. So that's really how it's going to change it. So will technology or AI replace human beings? Or as somebody said to me, will C-3PO, the robot in Star Wars, will C-3PO replace the CPO? Well, the answer is technology will replace people who don't know how to use technology. But people who do will remain very, very relevant.
Thank you, Sam. While we're on the topic of procurement survival, let's look at something even more critical, our relationships. How is AI impacting supplier dynamics?
Well, I think when you look at the advancement of technology, i.e. artificial intelligence, AI, the one space that it leaves for human beings is the opposite to AI, which is EI, emotional intelligence. So that's the area that human beings still reign. They still control, and they can still excel. So fundamentally, healthy and good relationships with your suppliers are going to become more and more essential. And more importantly than that, the advent of technology gives us more time to cultivate relationships with our suppliers, which is what we should be doing anyway, because we're not going to have to be getting involved in the mundane analytics or repetitive tasks within procurement. You have time to build strong strategic human relationships with suppliers, which ultimately are to the benefit of any business. So what technology is doing is enabling us to enhance the important strategic parts of procurement that we often neglect, I think. We can't overstress that relationship, that supply relationship bit. I remember, we all remember COVID-19, the great pandemic. It seems like it was some time ago, but there's an interesting statistic about COVID-19. And that is that something like 60% of companies, when the pandemic started, and supply chains were disrupted, 60% of companies didn't know that their goods were going to be supplied late until they were late. So delivery date comes, goods aren't here, you then get in contact with your supplier. Now, the organizations who practiced what they should do, which is effective supplier relationship management, and had strategic relationships with their suppliers, they knew that their goods were going to turn up late, because they had that relationship, they had that dialogue, and that's fundamental to running your business. So maintaining relationships with suppliers is not a nice to have, it's fundamental. So those organizations were able to react quicker, and actually more importantly, were able to recover from the pandemic when it was in effect over, a lot quicker than companies who did not have strategic relationships with their suppliers. Because what we do know is, when something happens, when a crisis happens, that's not the time to start trying to make a strategic relationship with your supplier. It's too late. So
from relationships to responsibility, let's now talk about something that can make or break an organization: ethics in AI-driven procurement. Ethics are the backbone of procurement, but with AI making more decisions, from supplier selection to compliance, they're concerned about bias, transparency, and accountability. Sam, do you see AI a risk to ethical procurement, or is it actually an opportunity?
It's a multifaceted but very good question. I like that question, and for anyone who's interested, there are a lot of organizations who we've worked with in this region, which is the Middle East and around the world, on what we call the CIPS ethics accreditation, which addresses this specific point. And you'll find organizations who have done that, and their teams are more aware of this subject. The reality is we can't we can't abandon ethics and say, look, this is something that's being looked at by technology. The guardian of ethics and that moral compass, as we call it, is always going to lie with human beings. Technology is a tool. Technology is a tool we use for data. But once that data is presented to us, it should really ultimately, there should be the facility for human beings to be able to interpret the information we're given and to make those decisions. So in other words, it's whatever we put into the technology that will determine what is ethical or not. I can remember years ago speaking to one of our clients, which was a government actually, and they were launching an e-procurement platform. And they were launching it in response to ethical issues that had happened in this particular country. So they asked my opinion as to whether this goes far enough to eradicate ethical issues. And I said it's a great initiative, because what technology does is it makes a process very transparent. Okay, so you can now see what's going on through the system. However, what about what happens before you start putting your transactions through technology? We know that 80% of procurement fraud happens at the specification stage, for example. So if you want to be unscrupulous and you're able to manipulate a specification, then it really doesn't matter what goes through the platform. It's still an unethical transaction. So really the moral compass should stay with the human beings. We just need to use the technology to do the heavy lifting for us, as it were. But we can't abdicate the moral responsibility to technology at all.
Before we move forward, I want to take a moment to talk about something close to my heart: women empowerment in procurement. So women are stepping into key leadership roles, breaking barriers and reshaping industry. What do you think are the biggest challenge women still face in procurement, and how do we overcome them?
It's a great question. And, procurement being one of those professions that is not so male dominated at the entry stage, is even. But as you get higher up in the leadership ladder, there's lack of parity with women leaders, or there's a more palpable pay gap, for example, which is similar to some other professions. I see a big change happening there. There are lots of senior procurement leaders now in the Middle East region and around the world, which is good to see. I see the new head of Saudi Arabia Health Holding Company. It's a lady. She's heading up procurement, and there are many others around the region. I know a good friend of mine who was the first supply chain director at the Abu Dhabi Formula One, lady. So the talent is there. But you're right, it may be in terms of the numbers of people at that senior level that's missing. I think fundamentally we kind of know why that happens, and it's because in business in general there isn't a level playing field for men and women. And what I mean by that is you probably have to be a little bit more extraordinary as a woman to go far, because they're possibly going to be, as the research shows, certain breaks in your career, to have children, etc., which are not addressed in the same way, because if men are not going to have the same career gap to be able to continue, then just that one thing provides an uneven playing field. That's one of the reasons why probably you find less women at senior levels. Diversity can be looked at differently. I always say use diversity as your superpower. And in a way, if you're the only woman in a boardroom, in the same way that it can be uncomfortable, but you can use that to your advantage, because if you're extraordinary, it's probably easier to stand out. I would say women striving for senior roles shouldn't necessarily have to or want to change to get into that role. Definitely be authentic to yourself. I think women leadership is an interesting thing. It works very well in family situations, and somehow in business we think it's different. But mothers rule families, and in corporations suddenly there's a perception that you have to take on a different type of leadership. But I think generally, from what I see, being true to yourself rather than conforming to any other stereotype or to somebody else is probably a way to differentiate yourself as well. So I think those are a few ways. Business is quite difficult, and in procurement, as I say, it's quite an interesting profession to try and navigate. But I think one important part also is to have credibility. So your track record in what you've done in organizations is always going to carry you through. Always make sure that there's no reason for that glass ceiling to happen. Have the necessary qualifications, have the track record, have the credibility, and then the rest should be left to further discussions, I think.
Do you think AI can help organizations make better, more sustainable decisions in procurement?
Another great multifaceted question. I'll start from the end. I think AI and technology is an enabler, right? And technology in procurement and supply is there to facilitate a more efficient way of decision making. So yes, undoubtedly, AI can help finding more ethical or sustainable solutions for your product or service that you're buying. Certainly, technology solutions can help you find a wider supplier base. Technology solutions can definitely help you to model things in a artificial environment before implementing them. So technology is there to really help our decision making. But the fundamental question is, how do those procurement professionals or teams contribute to sustainability without having an effect on the business, I think is what you're saying, or on the bottom line. But I think fundamentally that point of view can no longer be accurate. I think there is a perception that what they used to call green sourcing or sustainable sourcing costs more money. Now, there's a few ways of answering that. First of all, when you take a sustainable approach to procurement, you're not just looking at profit, you're looking at the triple bottom line. You have to analyze profit, people, i.e. the effect your procurement of that good or service is going to have on people, i.e. ethics. And also you have to balance the effect to the planet, right? So you suddenly get into this assessment where how much are these goods costing? Okay, to your bottom line in terms of price, but also to people. Is it affecting people? Is it affecting the planet? So that's the calculation you need to make. But before we go into that, even on the profit side of it, I still fundamentally disagree that procuring in a sustainable way is going to cost businesses more money. I think what we're in this cycle where people just need to be more educated on what the solutions are, because in the majority of cases, it doesn't mean that if you're procuring something that is not environmentally sustainable or ethical, it's going to cost your business more money. You just need to educate yourself around the solutions. If you're buying, recyclable paper towels for a washroom against non-biodegradable ones, yes, each sheet may cost, the recyclable ones may cost 5 times as more, but if you did a business case, you'll find there are other factors that would equalize that price, such as, is this one more flimsy? Are people going to use more of this because it's more flimsy than the other one? Is the recyclable one may not clog up your drains, therefore you need less of a facilities management contract to unclog your drains. So if you actually educated yourself and engaged with business cases to prove the point, the return on investment, maybe over a longer time, will normally even itself out.
No, you have to look at the TCO.
You absolutely always need to look at the TCO. People look at the short-term horizon when it comes to money, but that's never the solution, especially when you look at the wider calculations for sustainability, which are, as I said, people for a start. If you are procuring from an unethical place, maybe where people are being exploited, that's very short-termist as well, because the reputation aspect of that may well damage your business adversely as well. So therefore,
it will brew on your face.
it will, and it will have a
dramatic impact.
A direct impact on your profit. So therefore,
company
is
image,
that
guys.
a solution? Yeah. And from a planet perspective, is it really feasible that you're going to procure something that is then going to be put into landfill or something. You actually, there's responsibility from most people to take that into consideration, because all of these things are how you should procure. So I think in summary, what I'm saying is there is no such thing as sustainable procurement. Okay, there is just procurement. There shouldn't be, and there isn't really an option for people to procure in an unsustainable way. It's not really acceptable, and I think that's the only stance that can be taken.
Thank you, Sam. So, talking about business case, and we have leaders looking at us, I wanted to speak about some business case that you have worked with. So we are in Dubai today, and Sam has been working a lot of projects in Saudi. Everyone knows about Vision 2030. So I think it would be interesting for people to hear any business case, we will not reveal the client name, but vision that you have developed. And I'm sure that in Saudi, we have business case who's going to mix sustainability, AI, smart decision, and I'm sure that the audience will be happy to hear.
I think around the region, and I think you mentioned Saudi in particular, but Saudi and around the region, there are several examples of technology-based decisions in procurement that are adding value and are very innovative. If we start way back to when some of these Giga projects were being developed, maybe in Dubai, going back to when the expo happened, you saw a lot of the solutions were sustainability related in terms of introducing recyclable materials to make sure that you had sustainable rainwater coverage and access to water without expending carbon, for example. So that's what happened in that project. But if you come all the way down to now and you think about what kind of solutions are happening, there are myriad, and without going into any particular projects, you will find some projects around the region and in Saudi that acknowledge that, for example, there's so much construction going on around the region right now, right? So that means that there is a carbon impact, but there's also an impact in terms of finding suppliers, because it's a heated up market. So, I've seen solutions whereby organizations are, rather than trying to engage with the same suppliers here in the region to provide, let's say, building materials, well, they've gone as far afield as China, for example, and they have arranged for factories to be constructed just for themselves in China to manufacture materials for that particular product, and then implemented distribution centers, for example, around in Riyadh, just for this specific product. And what that does is that says we're not going to be engaging with the suppliers that everybody else is looking for, because they're already impacted or they're already utilized to their capacity. But we're going to develop our entire supply chain just for ourselves. So that does two things. It means that you're manufacturing for yourself at source, but also in building distribution centers in the region, you're also having an eye on the carbon footprint element of that supply chain.
Solve the issue.
So you're not just relying on importing everything. A lot of it is being manufactured nearby, and that takes care of the carbon cycle. It takes care of the issues around local sourcing and employing delivery time, employing local labor to benefit the local economy. So there are a myriad of solutions that are being put in place, and the good thing about it is that the intent of most of the projects and initiatives around this region are to be carbon neutral, with an eye on knowing that there are commitments towards at least 2050. So there is no point, knowing that there's so much development going on, there's no point adding to the carbon burden. So most of these projects have that in mind. I've visited many projects where the majority of them are already LEED Gold certified, and these are a lot of the new projects that are being built around the region are LEED certified at source, almost at inception. So it shows that the intent is there from leadership to have a good eye sustainability going forward. And I think finally you can see where that intent sits. The last three COPs have been in this region. So Egypt, Dubai, and actually the last one was in Azerbaijan, so not too in Baku, so not too far away. But certainly the leadership intent is close by.
Thanks, Sam. So now let's talk about how business can turn all this change in real growth opportunity. So Sam, from your perspective, what role do business consultancy firms play in helping organizations navigate the evolving landscape of procurement? Where do you see the biggest opportunity for external consultants to drive impact, whether through cost efficiency, sustainability, innovation, or digital transformation?
I think it's a good question, and look, there's a perception around external advice within an organization, but without going into the specific sectors, external advice or external consultancy is exactly what it's meant to be. It's saying that you need a helicopter view or an external view on your existing operation. And it's very difficult to have people who are close to a subject to have an alternative view. So I guess the only time that external help is validated is when that external help really takes an external view, a helicopter view, a sideways view to what you're doing, to what an organization is doing, and is able to add value by maybe giving some gap analysis or something around what can be better. And that can be in any area. It could be cost efficiency in areas that clearly haven't been identified internally. As long as that external advice has access to what those case studies are, what the best practices in the market. And I think the best examples of external advice are where finally you can go back to the client and show them what the relevant industry sector or global benchmark is against what's been done. So you're able to say, we've helped you out with this, we're advising this, and this is the reason. This is the benchmark. If this is the benchmark you're looking to achieve, whether it's percentage saving, whether it's sustainability, whether it's best practice efficiency, people and culture.
I'm going to ask a question about procurement maturity, because I think that's something that everyone who's in the Middle East face. So being the regional director of Middle East, Africa, Australasia, Asia, how are you seeing the maturity of procurement, meaning procurement being on the big table, having CPOs? Let's be real, unless procurement is on the table, it's difficult to be strategic, right? So how are you seeing this maturity level coming to the same level as Europe? Because we are talking about business consultant being external. You're from UK, I'm from France. That's normal. Everyone in Europe use consultant. That's a no-brainer. How are you seeing now this maturity, this external consultant being used, or people finding it relevant to hire in this part of the world?
It's a great question. And you could have asked me this at different times. I've lived in the Middle East for 16 years. And certainly when I came, I think I would immediately say that there's a huge maturity gap in procurement and supply chain practice, let's just say. And maybe in a lot of cases in business practices in general. So that's changed over the years. And now it's more of a mixed bag. So there is still a bit of a maturity gap. I think you mentioned Europe. Which we're familiar from a base perspective. Yeah. With the organisation I'm with CIPS. CIPS has been in the UK since 1932. So obviously, the maturity of procurement as a profession is embedded. And CIPS was set up in the UAE in 2011. So so you can see where the acknowledgement of procurement as a practice is. And certainly when I came to or one of the things that brought me to the Middle East is the opportunity, because there were a lot of organizations that did not have a procurement director, CPO. So it meant, or didn't have a procurement department, right? So, and that's the main thing. So procurement was not a practice. So yeah, the maturity gap existed. It's changed significantly over the last 10 to 15 years. Many organizations now have that professional practice. Certainly in government, we work with a number of governments where we've put in place capability and capacity development programs where now it's becoming more of a practice for people to be professionally acknowledged, professionally designated, professionally qualified in procurement and supply chain. And of course, government procurement departments are the biggest procurement departments. So that's starting to proliferate across the region. Some of the big corporates now have the same as well. Some of the bigger names in the region, maybe like ADNOC or Emirates, they have the same practices in place. So that perception, or the gap in procurement and supply chain as a practice, certainly is closing between some of the other parts of the world that you mentioned. But by the same token, what's interesting is in some ways in this region, that procurement and supply chain practice is actually more advanced. And the reason why is there's two reasons. One is technology. There's a big use of an adoption of technology in this region. And the reality is that as technology becomes more the norm for procurement practice, there probably is less of a reason for people to learn procurement and supply chain practices in the traditional way, because now you're using supply portals, you're using sourcing platforms. So actually, I think I mentioned before, the intellectual entry point of procurement has risen. So therefore, a lot of these companies and countries are able to leapfrog having to engage in procurement and supply chain practices in the traditional way, because they have access to technology platforms. So they're able to enter procurement strategies in a strategic way. And also, you got to think about some of the initiatives, some of the challenges in this region are significant, and some of the solutions are significant. And I think I just mentioned, one particular real estate company who, rather than using the same supply chain here in the Middle East, have literally just gone directly to China and built their own factories in China and their own distribution centers here. That is a supply chain innovation. Another company I was speaking to recently are building something like 300,000 homes in Riyadh. So the reality is that we can talk about a maturity gap, but there's no organizations in the other parts of the world we're talking about, whether it's Asia, whether it's Europe, or whether it's Australasia, that are doing something of that scale. And therefore, in certain sectors, for certain solutions, the innovation actually sits here. So it is a mixed bag now. You have some of the best brains in procurement and supply chain practice here, and they are not necessarily importing their solutions from where they've come from. A lot of the solutions or the initiatives or the innovations start here, because the challenges or some of the projects that are being envisioned here are unique to this part of the world, and they're not being done anywhere else in the world. So there is an awful lot of best practice here as well.
They're adapting quickly. Thanks, Sam. So finally, let's wrap things up with a fun question before we close. Sam, it's been incredible having you here. Before we let you go, if procurement had a theme song, what will it be?
that's an interesting one. I'm a big fan of rap music, so I would say it's definitely Rick Ross, BMF, Blowing Money Fast.
Okay. What a conversation. Thank you, Sam, for sharing your expertise. This was truly a masterclass in procurement, AI, and innovation. Now, here's the deal. If you're serious about transforming your procurement strategy, click the link below to claim your free procurement audit. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and I'll see you next time on Beyond Procurement. Thank you, Sam.